Viewers, we've been talking about living with the COVID in the absence of any kind of cure, any kind of prevention, any kind of vaccine. And so, the first big question that everybody has is, when are we going to get the COVID vaccine? How far along are we? Tonight, we're going to talk about that for the next half hour. We're going to focus on the world's attempt to get a COVID vaccine. In India, it's a landmark day because the human trials for Covaxin have begun today in 12 different sites. But here is another big development that just happened a short while ago, and this is a big one as well. It's the Oxford research that's going on that's now moved one step closer to actually getting the COVID vaccine, and I'll tell you why. In fact, the University of Oxford has just issued a detailed statement, and they've published their findings and made it public as well. They say that the phase 1 and 2 of their trials have shown promising results. They are seeing very good immune responses, that the good immune response is not just on neutralizing antibodies, but it's also on T cells, and that stimulating both arms of the immune system has been observed. Now, these are just a few things that we were able to pluck out. Of course, the entire set of research has been made public, but effectively, this is a sign of a progress that's been made by the research and the vaccine trial that's been conducted in Oxford. So, we're going to talk about that first. And then we will also talk about what India is doing and what does it mean for the fact that we have now started our own human trials. I'll get you all of those details as well. Let's also say good evening to Professor Sudhir Krishnan from the National Center for Biological Sciences, Dr. Rakesh Mishra, Director for Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, CCMB in Hyderabad, and Dr. Sanjay Pujari, Director for the Institute of Infectious Diseases in Pune. He is also a member of the National COVID Task Force. Professor Krishna, let's begin with you. Of course, it will take us and all of you experts and scientists and researchers a lot more time to go through what Oxford has published. But can you help our viewers understand what it is that they're saying and what does this really mean?
I actually, when I just logged on, I just had a message from Nikhil Tandon of All India Institute forwarding me the Oxford data, so I've not had a look at it. So what specifically would you like to know? I mean, what I thought I'd do in a minute or two is tell you the background of the capacity of the Indian vaccine scenario. So for example, when the poliomyelitis vaccine was made, the Christian Medical College was one of the landmark medical institutions in this country, was very involved in the way they converted the number of doses, and that was very important in contextualizing the vaccine. There are other examples. For example, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences created the rotavirus vaccine. From an Indian research institutional perspective, ICGB has a very nice dengue vaccine. We have a different emphasis on a dengue vaccine. If there's time, we can talk about that, but that capacity exists. The National Institute of Immunology was one of the earliest people to make mycobacterial vaccines against tuberculosis, leprosy, and so on. And those are going to be hugely influential in the way we think about vaccines. So I think there's a fair amount of institutional capacity. The manufacturing capacity in India is well documented. Everybody talks about it. But I think both in the landmark medical institutions and the research institutions, there's been a fair amount of capacity over the years, which I think will now play out. And I'd like to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, and of course, this has just come out, so a detailed study of it will be needed for, before any of you can also help us break it down. But let me just read out what the headline is. And it says, results of the phase 1 and 2 of Oxford COVID-19 vaccine trial has been published showing an acceptable safety profile and an homologous boosting increased antibody responses. These results, together with the induction of the both humoral and cellular immune responses, support large-scale evaluation of this candidate vaccine in an ongoing phase 3 program. So effectively, they have already entered the phase 3 program. The results that have been published are of phase 1 and 2. But Dr. Mishra, this does suggest that obviously they have seen some good results and good response come in the first 2 stages. And perhaps they're a step closer to finding the solution?
Yeah, that's exactly what the results say. But we should keep in mind that this result means that you can now go to stage 3 trial. Nothing beyond that. Most vaccines fail in stage 3 only because that's the larger scale and that's where the real test of a vaccine comes. So right now, what we have tested is that people don't fall very sick when this vaccine is given and there is a immune response to it. But resistance or vaccine effect is something which we'll know only when we have large number of people tested and various field conditions come into the force. The stage 1 and 2 are a little bit easier because you are looking for very specific thing, which is people are not falling sick and that there is some response to what you've injected. And it's good thing that here you have both immediate the T cell response and the cellular response of this vaccine. That's very good signal. But when it goes to stage 3, then you have large number of people will be tested. And as I said, most vaccines fail at that stage. And let us be very hopeful that with this much effort will lead to something. But we are talking about possibilities. We shouldn't call these as a vaccine. These are candidates of the vaccine, and hopefully among several that will be tried and some will work. So it's good thing at the moment, but we have to keep people always reminded that it's only a trial, and we are long way from having something in hand which will be useful for the people.
In fact, let me just ask Dr. Sanjay Pujari this question. One interesting thing that Dr. Mishra pointed out is that phase 3 is where maximum, vaccine candidates actually fail. So it's going to be very interesting to see from here on how the research and the development progresses. But Dr. Pujari, help our viewers understand what happens once you enter stage 3, and if you clear stage 3, what's next? Essentially, there are some reports that say that perhaps by September, UK may be able to provide for a vaccine. Can it be that soon?
Yeah, so I have been able to actually look at both the studies. The Lancet today published both studies, one from China and one from Oxford. Both are looking at adenovirus. It's a viral vector-based vaccine. The Oxford vaccine is a phase 1-2 study, and the Chinese study is phase 2. And there is a very beautiful editorial on both these research papers. What are the take-home points from these two papers? One is that there is immunogenicity. That means this particular platform of the vaccine using a viral vector is capable of inducing both a cell-mediated, that's a T cell response, and an antibody-based response. The Oxford study is quite big. It's almost 1,000 patients. And the Chinese study, I think, is around 500 patients. So essentially, that is the one important takeaway from both these studies. The second takeaway is that there were very little side effects. The side effects were minor, like fever, chills, local site injection reactions, or pain. And this was usually taken care of by giving paracetamol. So these two things are very important because normally when you talk about a vaccine, it has to go through multiple phases of testing and then subsequently go into a phase 3 and subsequently get manufactured and marketed. But essentially, this is an urgent pandemic. So we need to really look at fast tracking all these trials, but not compromising science. There's another vaccine candidate, which is the mRNA vaccine, which is from the Moderna in the US, which was also published last week, which also showed similarly that you are able to induce both a cell-mediated and a T cell and a B cell response. So underlying thing is when we are going to phase 3, I agree that phase 3 is a different ball game where you actually are not just basing your assessment of the vaccine efficacy by laboratory measurement of immune response, but actually rolling out in the population and trying to see if people get infected in spite of the vaccine or people don't get infected when the vaccine is given as compared to people who don't receive the vaccine. So that is obviously the pivotal phase of a trial, the phase 3 of a candidate vaccine, the phase 3 trial. But these three studies, both the Moderna and the two Lancet studies today published, very clearly show that we get a lot of confidence of both from the safety as well as from the immunogenicity perspective to roll it out in phase 3 trials. Fast track, try to assess the efficacy, what we call as vaccine efficacy, to assess this efficacy and make sure that in the larger population also you don't see major adverse events, and then subsequently you can try to manufacture, or there is simultaneous manufacturing happening for the Oxford vaccine, by the way, by AstraZeneca as well as the Serum Institute in Pune. So this is something which is unprecedented. And I think the most important thing also is that science is not being compromised, but fast tracking with good regulatory supervision is happening. I'm not sure we'll be able to get vaccine, which even if it is proven to be efficacious by this year end, but early it's projected that by this year end for the Oxford vaccine and for the Moderna, the US vaccine, early 2021 is where, if everything goes fine, you may have these vaccines available for use. But subsequently after that, it's a different ballgame altogether, because you need to roll out globally this vaccine. There has to be equitable distribution. And then there are the other implementation issues associated with rolling out vaccine.
Yes. Okay. In fact, like some of our experts have pointed out, one of the key ones where we've seen a significant development today has been the University of Oxford, this vaccine research, which they're doing along with AstraZeneca. It's already in phase 3. It's a large set where 10,000 people are actually part of this trial that's taking place right now. They've already published the findings of phase 1 and 2 today, and that's sending out some positive signals. The other one, which is also in phase 3, is that of Sinovac. Sinovac Biotech is also in phase 3 of trials and could be a potential candidate. This is being done in Brazil in partnership with the Brazilian vaccine producer Instituto Butantan. And again, in this one as well, nearly 9,000 healthcare professionals are working on this entire research. The third one, which Dr. Pujari also just mentioned, is the Moderna trial, where phase 2 has been completed and they already have the approval now to go into phase 3 trials with about 30,000 healthy volunteers, and this is set to start later this month, by the end of this month as well. Very quick question is from Professor Sudhir Krishna on this before we move to the India part. Professor Krishna, 160 vaccine candidates and studies out there, 20 of them in an advanced stage. What are you the most hopeful about the way the information is coming out so far?
Actually, the other two panelists have done a very good job of describing the vaccine process. So I'll actually focus on a little bit, which is the India component, even though you said we'll take it up a little later. And that's the contextualization of vaccines. Remember that when you look at the BCG data, or when you look at the deaths per million for COVID, you clearly see a very clear heterogeneity. One of the assumptions has been BCG, but BCG could be a surrogate for something else. So I think the point about the phase 3, which the other two panelists talked about, there is another caveat, and that is phase 3 in a very context-specific region. So whatever happens and is happening fast elsewhere is very good, but we have to continue to focus on our work, on defining cohorts, defining all the parameters that we need to conduct trials out here, because finally we've got to be able to conduct the trials out here and understand what are the specifics of our population, how are they going to respond with our different genetics, with our different co-infections, with our different backgrounds, and so on and so forth. And that's, I think, incredibly important, in addition to what the other panelists have just said.
So let me ask you this question. Essentially, if I got you right, Professor Krishna, you were saying that even if one part of the world has found or has gone one step closer or may soon have a vaccine, that may not necessarily benefit all types of people in all parts of the world, and we need to find something that's perhaps more suitable for us?
I think we need to test these vaccines with an open mind. We need to be very clear that the demographic parameters here are very different. We have to be very clear that our groups of vulnerability might be very different. You might want a spectrum of vaccines. You might want the mRNA vaccine for one group. You might want other vaccines for other groups. So I think the point is that you have to keep an open mind. You have to build the entire ecosystem and be flexible, fast. And I think we're doing that. we're probably doing that in a stepwise manner, and hopefully we'll get there.
Okay, Dr. Pujari, do you want to come in on this aspect as well? Let's talk about what India is looking at, what we have started today, the human clinical trials that's being led by AIIMS, with Bharat Biotech in 12 different sites. But that's not the only one that even we are looking at. There are several other options that are being explored.
Yeah, so essentially, when you look at development of a vaccine, there are different vaccine platforms that are used. So, for example, as I said, the Moderna use the RNA, the Oxford and the Chinese use the adenovirus vector. The Covaxin, that is the Indian vaccine, is looking at using an inactivated virus. And I think there's the Zydus vaccine, the Zydus Cadila vaccine is actually looking at a DNA vaccine. So essentially, if you look at this, these are all different platforms of delivery of the viral antigens into the human body, seeking to develop an immune response against the virus. So when there is a different platform, you need to look at really testing it out. You can't take lessons from the other platforms. So you need to do your own trials. You need to look at what is the immunogenicity of the vaccine, what is the safety of the vaccine, how long does the immunity last, and things like that. But for all of these vaccines, as the previous panelist mentioned, it's very important to be region specific, to try to keep an open mind and try to test these vaccines in our own population as well. I heard that Serum Institute is actually going to start testing, planning to test the Oxford vaccine in India as early as maybe next month or in September or something. So we will have regional data also of these international vaccines. The other important aspect is many of these phase 2 trials or even in phase 3 trials, they look at healthy adults. The most vulnerable population that are usually susceptible to COVID are the elderly population. And we all know that elderly population's immune response is little lower than healthy adults. So the efficacy of the vaccine in this population, do you need a double boosting? Do you need a boosting later on? Those things can only be understood if we roll out and involve these subgroups. What is the impact of vaccine on children, for instance? What is the impact of vaccine on pregnant ladies? So all these are important questions. So it's not like something that we have a vaccine now and we can give it to everybody, but we need to do proper regulatory approved controlled trials to look at specific subpopulations as well in regional areas to be confident that these vaccines also work in a population, and we will be able to roll it out as a program in future.
So, because you mentioned that the different age groups and the most vulnerable age group perhaps would also need something specific, we understand that ICMR has also given permission to a Chennai institute to begin the BCG vaccine trial. Now, can you also help our viewers understand a little bit more about that? I believe that's already something that exists. We just need to try out its efficacy or how it impacts, certain kind of COVID patients.
Yeah, so the BCG vaccine has always been a very interesting point for its efficacy in preventing COVID-19, or, for example, if you get COVID-19, try to reduce the severity of the illness. This is based on the premise, and there are some previous literature to suggest that BCG vaccine has been responsible for protecting children against other respiratory infections apart from tuberculosis. This has also been looked upon in ecological studies where they have found an association between countries which have active use of BCG and the lower incidence of deaths due to COVID-19. But these are all associations and don't really prove the point. We know that BCG is able to induce innate immunity, which is cross protective against other bacteria apart from Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So the trial that ICMR at the National Institute of Research in TB is doing is a very excellent design to look at trying to use BCG vaccine at a large population base of elderly population and seeing whether it can prevent the incidence of infection due to COV2, or whether once infected, it reduces severity of the illness. So the answer is still not out there, but it is one research question that needs to be studied.
Okay, let's also talk a little bit about Covaxin. Covaxin is where the human trials have begun today in India, taking place at 12 different sites across the country. We understand that already about 1125 samples have been collected. Today there was a detailed, interaction that the AIIMS officials had with the media. They said that the trials will be conducted in Delhi to begin with 100 volunteers. First, 50 patients will be, given 3 different kinds of formulations, and then the rest 50 will be given, and that's how this trial will then progress. Phase 1 will be on people in the age group of 18 and 55 years who don't have any comorbidity, any other serious illness. Phase 2 will then focus on people between 16 and 65 years with no comorbidity, and at different stages, different samples will be studied. But one interesting point that they also made is that it is going to take at least 2 to 3 months, for us to get the results and then to study the results. So that's as much time that is expected. Again, Dr. Mishra, to break this down for our viewers to understand with Covaxin and what's, how we've started off, obviously not as far ahead as an Oxford or even a Moderna, but how do you view the start that India has made today?
This is something we should all appreciate, and it's an excellent start. We must try and have our own vaccine, because as you have already heard that availability of vaccine has many things. First of all, the existence of the vaccine, and later whether we will be the first one to get. And vaccines like Moderna vaccines are going to be expensive because they will require cold chain, and a country like ours will have issues with that. So we can do that, but it will cost a lot more, and affordability, many things will come into question. So having our own potential candidate and trying, that is the ideal thing to do for a country of this size, where we have a huge capacity to build vaccine. We supply to the whole world. We are probably among the top, if not maybe among the top couple of suppliers. So if we have our own vaccine, that is great. I just want to emphasize that these are all candidates. As Dr. Pujari mentioned, different vaccines have different platform, they perform differently, and it's unpredictable which vaccine will work better, which will not be working better. Covaxin is a different platform, which is inactivated virus being injected, and if it works well, maybe some population and some conditions, this will be a better candidate. The fact that whole world is trying 100, 200 vaccines, there is a logic in that many will fail, most will fail. In fact, we should keep in mind all the time that there is no good vaccine against any coronavirus. Against AIDS, HIV, we are trying vaccine for decades. So these are all candidates, and we have to try as much as possible. I mean, this is a very unprecedented effort being put against one particular virus, the whole world putting billions of dollars. So that is required, and to just increase the chance. We are never sure which vaccine will be, first of all, reach anywhere, and then whichever reaches, how effective it will be, how long it will protect us, how safe it will be, and how robust it will be, that it will protect a vast range of age group and ethnicity and so on and so forth. Affordability and many other parameters are there to be kept in mind. So it's a complex thing, and I wish that India has 6 more candidates to put in the first, second phase trial, and if things work, go to stage 3 trial, because any vaccine comes, we have to test in our population. That will not be fair to recommend a vaccine straight away which is tested in, let's say, Caucasian population. And I'm sure our regulatory authority will ask for some small trials, even for a successful vaccine. Once it is made. So those are things which they have to be done.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. Dr. Mishra, in fact, if I may just take you back to that point, because it's very interesting, and I don't think too many people, not at least the layman understands this, that even, you're saying effectively that even if Oxford's vaccine works out, or in any other part of the world, whether it's in Japan or China or Brazil or USA, it works out, we will still have to try it out on our own people before we actually start distributing it?
That's proper way of doing it. In fact, it's not only vaccine, any drug which is tried on different population must be tried in our population, because there's a whole new understanding of drugs and their response, which depends a lot on genetic basis, is emerging. So our ethnic groups may respond differently. Some may be susceptible to bad influences of a particular drug or vaccine. So they must be tried. I just wanted to bring another point which you asked in the previous question, was that actually 2 months, 3 months is not a big thing. We should not be considered that we are in some kind of race vaccine and so somebody is a first, second, third. It depends upon how good, how robust your vaccine is. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, I don't really care if we are starting a new candidate now. As you have heard, maybe we will have something next year. And these trials, this stage 3 trial will actually be determining how long we are going to wait, whether sufficient number of people have been given vaccine, if they have not responded. We are not going to infect people after giving the vaccine, so quickly figure out whether the vaccine is working or not. So it is not at all late. We are not behind. We are just behind by whatever artificial race kind of environment that has been put. Many vaccines should be tried, and this is because that's one best way. We don't get disease, we don't have to worry about drugs, we don't have to worry about many other things, because drugs and all have a different story. So vaccine should be our first option. So we are not late, and yes, if vaccine is successful in some other place, we should try in our population as a small trial, maybe few hundred people, few thousand people quickly. And by the time we are preparing enough, we are all said that vaccine is good for us as well.
No, you're completely right, and I didn't mean it in that ways at all. I understand 2 to 3 months of a difference isn't a big deal at all, especially when you read about the fact that a polio vaccine took 47 years for us, to develop that. We took about 36 years to develop the vaccine for yellow fever. So yes, I'm hoping it doesn't take us that long, and we're done within a year. But of course, we understand that in these things, one cannot rush.
If I remember,
but let me ask one other question, and Professor Krishna, maybe you.
I was going to say that if I remember correct, the fastest vaccine we have till now is a 4 year or something. So if we get in 1 year a vaccine, that will be something remarkable. So we are maybe hoping a little bit extra.
Yes, correct. No, you're absolutely right there. The other point that I wanted to highlight was, something that was also raised today in the news conference that happened about this specific vaccine trial for Covaxin, and about how India is a big manufacturing hub. It does, even if it, gets developed and found elsewhere in the world, we'll probably be the ones who will also be manufacturing it. But does that give us an edge, Professor Krishna? If somebody else in Oxford or US or wherever finds a vaccine and we are the ones manufacturing it for the world, does it give us an edge in terms of using it for our own people?
So I think the manufacturing edge is obvious because we've been now fairly large-scale manufacturers of vaccines for a while. But I think what is not appreciated enough is actually the fact that we actually have an R&D capacity which can also give an edge. So historically, the institutions that I mentioned which were doing vaccines, but today that range is much broader. If you look at the Indian Institute of Science, for example, the molecular biophysics and structural biology people were never working on vaccines before. But I now know that senior colleagues in the Institute of Science are thinking of vaccines and working on COVID, fortunately. Colleagues in my own group in the National Center for Biological Sciences, in part with the incubator that we have, which is called CCAMP, we are working on as a vaccine resource. Younger colleagues of mine, Arun Shankar Das, Meenakshi Iyer, they're sequencing on large scale, they're developing design using Indian consensus, they're testing out using DNA vectors. So I think the R&D capability now, which was historically segregated from the vaccine space, is now increasingly getting integrated. And I think you will find that we will be able to very soon integrate into other vaccine issues. But I want to talk about two things which the other panelists brought up, but which didn't elaborate. One is that you and the panelists talked about the age groups. But I also think the way the infection is transmitted is also critical. It's pretty clear that dosage is very important. So if you're in a close proximity and you get a big dose of coronavirus, the way your immune system responds, as opposed to getting a sensitization and developing an immune response and herd immunity, is very different. So I think the clinical trials also have to take into account contextualization of where and when and how the virus is actually being spread, how is herd immunity dynamics evolving, and those kinds of issues. So
Okay.
essentially, yeah, I think.
Okay,
Context would
point
be
well taken. Okay, you know what? I think that's a great point that you've made, and maybe we will take it up another day for a more detailed conversation, because there is definitely merit to delving deeper into that point. But I want to thank all three of you gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and you taking my queries. And really helping us understand what it means, where we've reached in our hunt for a COVID vaccine, in our research for a COVID vaccine. Thank you so much, all three gentlemen, for joining us. Viewers, it is definitely a special day today for two different reasons. The fact that India's own efforts are now moving on quickly. We've now entered the stage of human trials, phase 1, at 12 different locations here in our own country with Covaxin, and that research now is picking up pace. Not just that, Oxford is getting in some good results. Their research is already in phase 3. Phase 1 and 2 has shown good results, the details of which have now been published. But like our experts pointed out, let's keep in mind, this is a process that takes a really long time. Something that may be found in one part of the world may not necessarily be suitable for us. So even if they manage to find a vaccine, we will have to see it works for people in India. Secondly, the whole part of manufacturing it, the whole part of distributing it and ensuring that people who need it on an urgent basis, the vulnerable groups, the frontline COVID warriors, all of that is going to be another challenge. And thirdly, and the most immediate one, that these are all still vaccine candidates. And the process, the research is still on. So just because something is entered phase 3 doesn't mean that we may necessarily get a COVID vaccine soon. But we can always hope that we do. And on that optimistic note, I'm going to wrap up this conversation as far as the search for the COVID vaccine is concerned. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, without wasting any time, let's quickly dive into the urban debate at 9 p.m. And I've got 6 big stories here lined up for you. First up, I'm going to start with the Kerala gold smuggling case. And this is a case where every day there is a significant twist, a new set of revelations, as interesting as the previous set, and the entire scandal, the entire smuggling racket just keeps getting bigger and keeps getting more dangerous as the NIA now investigates this case. The NIA has now made, claimed that the entire smuggling racket may be linked to terror funding, that they may be linked to hawala money and money laundering, and the racket has therefore gotten bigger. And there are now documents under investigation of the NIA that show a closer link between the key accused in this case and the UAE consulate officials. The NIA was supposed to question the UAE attaché, but before we could do that, he already left the country and went ahead. Let me quickly bring you up to date with the big development that's happened now in the last 24 hours, and this is what we're going to be focusing on. Revelation number 1. Nearly 230 kgs of gold has been smuggled via this specific route into Kerala just since last year. In less than a year, 230 kgs of gold has been smuggled. The similar route in the name of, baggage coming in, addressed to the UAE consulate, trying to use the diplomatic card and trying to somehow get through using the diplomatic immunity. This route has actually been used about 20 times before we finally woke up to it and busted this smuggling ring. NIA is probing the terror link. NIA is also probing the hawala link to this entire scandal. Now, there are 3 people three key accused who have been arrested, the main names that keep emerging every single time. One, of course, is Swapna Suresh, the lady who seems to have connections everywhere, right from the aviation industry to the Kerala government itself and the UAE consulate. Her name pops up at every single point and is central to this entire investigation. The second name is of Sandeep Nair, and both Swapna Suresh and Sandeep Nair, who worked together as a team, were arrested in Bengaluru together. Now, the third one, and this is Faisal Farid, was arrested in Dubai. This is how the case has now become even bigger, viewers, as we get you more details. Let me go across to Vivek first and ask Vivek this question. Vivek, first let's talk about the details that have emerged with Faisal Farid. There's the link, 230 kgs of gold over 20 times. This entire modus operandi was used. How did nobody find out? How did they manage to get away? What were they doing? What was the route that was being followed?
Yes, Tanvi, as you said, let me just confirm the figure. It's not exactly 230, but somewhere in between 200 and 230 kgs. That is what the estimates the customs officials and the NIA believe is to have believed to be smuggled. In the last 1 year through the diplomatic route, where Swapna Suresh and Sarit were basically the carriers or the agents who actually collected the gold, the diplomatic baggages from the various airports in Kerala, and they managed it to supply to other people, especially people who have invested in the gold market. Now, what I understand is that it's a huge racket behind this, and also there is Hawala agents, at least Hawala agents directly or indirectly connected with this particular racket. As far as the customs investigations are concerned, 13 people have been arrested, of which 10 of them are investors who have bought this gold from PK Ramesh. Now, PK Ramesh is the fifth accused in this particular case. He's a person who actually collects the gold from Sandeep Nair and actually distributes it to various other people who have invested in the gold, and they in turn sell it to others. So this gold actually goes to other people, and who are the final beneficiaries of this? For what purpose are these gold used? Whether it's purely used for jewelry purposes or whether it was used for funding terror activities, for other Hawala uses or other anti-national activities, that is exactly what the agencies need to investigate at this point of time. But one thing is very clear: the whole smuggling issues which is happening over the last few years has happened with the knowledge of very higher ups, not just within the diplomats, but also within the bureaucratic and the political circles in Kerala. It's very, very sure, because after the suspension of M. Shivashankar, the IT secretary to the chief minister, is concerned, it is very, very clear that Swapna Suresh did have links with very people who are in the government and also in the diplomatic circles and also in the UAE consulate. Now, the UAE Consular General or the attaché has managed to leave India 4 days back. From Trivandrum, he managed to go to Delhi, and from Delhi he went to Dubai. But what is strange that has happened in the last 2 days is that the gunman of the attaché who was missing before 2 days was found near his house with his wrist injured, with his veins being cut, and he was trying to commit suicide. That's what we understand. Now, for what purpose was he trying to commit suicide is something that needs to be investigated. He's currently in the hospital. Once his health is improved, the officials will be questioning him. Now, one thing is very sure, that when the attaché had moved to UAE from India, it is the duty of the police officer or the security officer to inform this to the crime branch, to the special branch of the crime branch, and also to the commissioner's office. Both of these has not been done in this particular case. Why didn't the officer not inform about the attaché moving out of the country? This is something that needs to be investigated. And also, there are lots of other questions that the government needs to be investigated on. How can a person who has not even completed a 10th standard manage to get a job under the IT department, which comes directly under the chief minister's ambit, that is something that needs to be investigated. Remember, there are a vigilance case that is pending against
Okay.
Swapna Suresh, the second accused in this case. But with that, she managed to get a job, a top job in the UAE consulate, and 3 years she worked over there, and then she quit the job from the UAE consulate and managed to get a job under the IT department. So various questions that needs to be answered over here. Large
Okay.
quantum of gold has been smuggled in the last few years from Dubai to various parts of Kerala. But this time around, on the 5th of July, it was, customs officials who got the tip-off from Dubai and managed to seize, the gold. And that's how the whole issue, the whole smuggling racket was exposed to the world. And that's the reason why this investigation is going on at this point of time.
So stay with me, Vivek. I have one more quick follow-up question with you, but I just want to take our viewers through the timeline as well. It all started around end of June, which is where the custom officials first intercepted this diplomatic cargo that was addressed to the UAE consulate. So 1st of July, it is reported that Swapna Suresh, who's now a key accused and in custody, actually demanded that this baggage be released. She claimed she was from the UAE consulate. She tried to mislead the customs officials. In fact, a former consulate, PRO official even visited the airport pretending to be from the UAE, asking and threatening the officials to let go of the cargo, but that did not cut any ice with the customs department. Finally, they got permission to open this cargo and go through it. Of course, this is happening first time in 1 year since this entire smuggling has been going on. Soon after, as the investigation began and details began to emerge, by July 7, the Chief Minister's Principal Secretary had been sacked because his links to Swapna Suresh had emerged. The NIA then took charge. Within 2 days, NIA had taken over the investigation by July 9th. On July 10th, 4 suspects were actually charged under the UAPA Act, a very stringent law that actually deals with terrorism-related cases. On July 11th, Swapna Suresh and Sandeep Nair were then arrested in Bengaluru, and then subsequently, more arrests were made. In fact, let me speak about the latest one. And, Vivek, tell us more about this Faisal Farid guy who's been arrested in Dubai. What is his link? Do we know when he will be brought back to India?
Tanvi, what I understand from the sources is that Faisal Farid will be brought back to India in the next 3 days. What we heard yesterday is that today or tomorrow that he would be sent back to India. But I understand that there is some more delay in getting back Faisal Farid. Now, he's the third accused in this case. He's supposed to be one of the main kingpin in this particular case, because what we understand from the Dubai police is that there is already 3 rounds of interrogation that is over by now, and they have managed to get certain shocking details, revelations after questioning Faisal Farid. He is believed to have given out certain major important details about the whole the smuggling racket. Now, he is a person who has been sending, it is in his name that the baggage was sent to the UAE consulate, which is, addressed to the attaché, that is the UAE Consulate General over here, whose name is Rashid Kamis. He's a person who managed to flee from the country. Now, whether, Faisal Farid was involved in other, for the last, 4 or 5 years, whether he was sending such baggages with the help of the cargo officials in Dubai airport, or the airline officials, that is something that needs to be investigated. What are the links between Faisal Farid and those people who are already arrested over here? Now, only after questioning Faisal Farid by the NIA that you get a clear picture about who is the real beneficiary, because Faisal Farid will be knowing certainly the beneficiary of this gold smuggling, because he's a person who's been given this job of actually handing over, or even the packing of this gold within the diplomatic baggage and making sure that reaches safely in the international airports in Kerala. So arresting, questioning Faisal Farid by the NIA and the customs officials is going to be very, very important, and therefore repatriating Faisal Farid back to India is something major. Is going to be a major breakthrough in this particular case, and that is exactly what the NIA is looking for right now.
Okay. All right, Vivek, thanks so much for bringing us the details of this big story. Well, from Kerala, let's move to West Bengal, where a horrific case of a minor's death has now turned ugly, has triggered violent protests and clashes, and has obviously also become a political flashpoint, just like many such instances in the recent past in the state of West Bengal. Now, what has happened is in Dinajpur, a minor girl's death led to protests, but the complaint that was filed by the girl's father actually named a person, and the complaint said that this man is patronized and backed by the TMC. Soon after, we understand that this accused, who's named in the complaint, was also found dead. Now, the BJP claims that this girl was actually brutalized and assaulted and sexually assaulted, and the accused was actually linked to the TMC. But the police says so far in the initial investigation, they haven't found any evidence of sexual assault. Let me just quickly go across to Tamal, who's been tracking this case for us. Tamal, take us through the details. What has happened here, and what has the investigation shown so far?
Well, a police investigation is relying heavily on the post-mortem report. As you rightly began by saying, the body of a minor girl, she's 15 years old, her body was found under mysterious circumstances, very close to her house. Family claims when they recovered the body, when they found the body in the wee hours of yesterday morning, they found the body half naked. And that's what had stoked the suspicion as whether she had been sexually assaulted, whether she had been abused physically, brutalized and then murdered. Thereafter, police claim that after family had recovered the body, family never cared to inform police. Police, after learning about the incident, went to meet the victim's family or the deceased family on their own, and then they had recovered the body, sent it for post-mortem. Now, what has the post-mortem revealed? The post-mortem has revealed so far that the death has been due to poisoning. There has been no mention of sexual assault or physical assault. The post-mortem, while the body was studied, there was no mark of any physical assault. So police at this point in time, even though there are 2 more tests awaited, they are of the firm opinion, prima facie, it does not look like a sexual assault case. Number 3, yesterday there was massive violence at Chopra. BJP workers were allegedly involved. BJP had demanded justice. Family members had demanded immediate arrest of the culprits. Villagers had demanded the same. And thereafter, there was massive violence. In that violence, bombs were allegedly hurled, bullets were allegedly fired. Police had to fire tear gas shells to control and contain the situation. Number 4, today in the morning, the family the girl's family has lodged a complaint, and in that complaint they have specifically mentioned one name. The father of the girl, the complainant in this case, has identified himself as a BJP worker. BJP as a political party has also jumped into the scene and had appropriated the family, suggesting the deceased is a sister of a BJP worker. The complaint was received, yet to be converted into FIR, but the complaint had named one individual, also claimed to be a Trinamool Congress patronized goon, quote-unquote, as being mentioned in the complaint letter. And soon after that, we found the accused, whose name is there in the complaint copy. His body was found again under mysterious circumstances, floating on the surface of the body, very close to the spot from where the girl's body was found. So at this point in time, the post-mortem of the man is still awaited. We do not know how he died. We cannot confirm how he died, but it has only stoked a lot of suspicion as under what circumstances 2 lives were lost, at Chopra and North Dinajpur. BJP on their part is still claiming that it was not simply a poisoning death. The girl has been brutalized, but there are several questions coming to fore whether these 2 individuals had gone out to meet on their own, whether it was a tragedy, it's a murder, something police will have to investigate and clarify. But BJP has traded a lot of charges, to the extent has questioned the law and order situation in the state of West Bengal. Trinamool Congress on their part has also in a way countered, suggesting that BJP is trying to politicize the death. The fact that the complainant in this case, or the girl's father, has identified himself as a BJP worker and has also tried identifying the accused, who is unfortunately no more at this point in time, as a Trinamool Congress worker, has given a lot of reason, a lot of fodder to people to suspect whether the complaint filed by the girl's father is politically motivated, where the entire case has a lot of influence of politics. At this point in time, the state government is relying on the investigation which is carried out by the district police. But yes, it's important to understand, in North Dinajpur, in less than 8 days, there had been 2 incidents, or rather 3 incidents now, which have shocked the conscience. Last Monday, it was the body of BJP MLA from Ahmedabad, Devendra Nath Roy, whose body was found hanging under mysterious circumstances. BJP at that point in time had claimed he died due to political killing, and again had differed from, or rather dismissed the post-mortem report, which has suggested suspected suicide. So at this point in time, BJP is making allegations. Trinamool Congress is dismissing those allegations, saying they are all politically motivated. Police on their part are saying that they are doing their job. The post-mortem report is all transparent, and as I said, the state government at the moment is relying heavily on the police investigation. Back to you.
Yes, Tamal, thanks so much for bringing us all of those details. And like Tamal was pointing out, it was really, unfortunate, the kind of ugly protests and clashes that unfolded with these people who had come out on the streets angry, wanting an investigation and action against the accused. The NH34 highway was actually blocked. And as the police intervened to try and stop and calm down the protesters, they actually turned violent, and there was tear gas shells that was used. Even the other side, the protesters had some goons involved there who allegedly even shot bullets, used guns. That's how unfortunate this entire incident has become. Case after case, instead of focusing on a fair investigation and bringing justice and talking about the story, the pain of that family, unfortunately what we are seeing in Bengal is that every case simply boils down to a political flashpoint, a fight between the TMC and the BJP, and the core issue at hand is always forgotten. Let's move on, and let's move from West Bengal to this story coming in from Uttar Pradesh, from Deoria. And it's a heartbreaking story, viewers. It's a story that shows you why healthcare needs to be our top priority, COVID or no COVID. Why, even in normal times, India needs to talk about healthcare, and why Mirror Now repeatedly highlights stories about hospitals, about medical staff, the infrastructure, the healthcare availability and access to it to people, because it is so abysmal in this country that even if COVID wasn't there, we are usually struggling. Now, this is a story where in Deoria, the hospital staff allegedly refused to help this poor family. A mother and her 4-year-old got a patient who had broken bones. And the staff at the hospital said, "Pay us or we are not going to help you carry the stretcher." And so if you see in the visuals, with nobody there to help them, it was actually the mother along with her 4-year-old little child who were pushing this stretcher through the corridor of the hospital. How can this be acceptable in any country? It is acceptable in our country because our healthcare infrastructure is so abysmal and we've become so immune to it, so indifferent to it, that we just don't care and we just don't talk about it. With the lowest level of spending on healthcare, year after year, it barely even makes to our conversation points, to our election narratives. And what happens is this, unfortunately. Now, the hospital authorities in this specific case, viewers, initially tried to shrug all responsibility and say that nothing like this has happened. Nobody asked for money in our hospital. No, nobody said give us 30 rupees or else we won't give you a stretcher. They gave all kinds of lame reasons and excuses. Of course, the pressure has now forced them to suspend one ward boy. But I want to sit here on the urban debate tonight and say and ask the UP government and the UP administration to take note of this. Just one suspension of a ward boy isn't enough. Heads must roll for this incident. Heads must roll in the senior official system. We need to make people accountable for forcing a 4-year-old child to push the stretcher with a patient who had broken bones. Listen into what the hospital authorities said.
3 जुलाई को यहाँ भर्ती हुआ, मारपीट का केस था, उसको चाकू लगी हुई है, पैर और हाथ दोनों टूट गया है, उसको कच्चा प्लास्टर बंधवा दिया गया है। ड्रेसिंग के लिए एक विंडो काटी जाती है प्लास्टर में, उसके लिए वो जा रहा था। उस दिन हमारे 4th क्लास में स्ट्राइक पर थे और इस वजह से वो खुद स्ट्रेचर लेकर जा रहे थे। फिर भी हमने उसको वार्ड बॉय को वहाँ से ट्रांसफ़र कर दिया है और उसके खिलाफ कार्रवाई कर रहे हैं।
परिजन ये भी आरोप लगा रहे हैं कि 30 रुपये मांगा दिया।
नहीं, पैसे कोई बात नहीं, पैसा कोई वहाँ कोई आया रहती ही नहीं जिसको बात कर रहे हैं, वहाँ जेंट्स की ड्यूटी है।
Let's move on and get you another story from Uttar Pradesh linked to, of course, what's happened in the Supreme Court now. As a state government, you are responsible to maintain the rule of law. Maintaining law and order requires arrest, trial, and sentencing. This was the message from the Chief Justice of India, Justice S.A. Bobde, to the UP government and the police as he heard a plea filed in the Vikas Dubey case. This plea raises questions about the encounter, and in court today, a justification was being presented by the government and the police. But these are the hard-hitting observations, apart from the fact that Chief Justice of India actually also said that I am appalled to find out that a man, a gangster like Vikas Dubey, was out on bail. Yes, viewers, the thing that we raised here, and night after night, ask the UP police, ask the BJP, ask the UP government, how is it that a man like Vikas Dubey was out? How is it that your explanation is, oh look, we acted against him, he was on bail, but at least we had arrested him in 2017. How is that even an explanation? And that's largely what even the Chief Justice of India asked today. Now, let me tell you what else happened in the courtroom today. Now, this is a plea that has been filed in the Supreme Court that says that fighting lawlessness cannot lead to the state itself being lawless, raising questions on the SIT. The plea also says that the SIT that is investigating the encounter has officials who face charges of fake encounters. And the UP government has agreed to reconstitute the probe panel. We understand there may also be a judicial scrutiny of this entire encounter that will take place. But let me tell you what it is that the UP government told the top court. That Vikas Dubey was the one who attacked police days after his death. That 8 police personnel were shot by Vikas Dubey and his team. And Dubey had even gone on to mutilate the bodies of the policemen who were killed. That's part of their argument, where all of this is facts. Can any of it justify what happened on the encounter day is the big question. Now, after the CGI rapped the Uttar Pradesh government and said that he's appalled at the fact that such a person was released on bail, that this is a failure of an institution that he was released on bail. Justice Bobde also said, I need a report. We need a report on such bail orders. How do these people get bailed? He also said that you don't have to tell us who Vikas Dubey is. Close to 50 cases were filed against him. We know. Now the Uttar Pradesh government will reconstitute the panel probing the gangsters' encounter. The new probe panel is likely to include a retired Supreme Court judge and a retired police officer. A draft notification is likely to be submitted by the government in Supreme Court in the next couple of days. So the Supreme Court there very closely monitoring this, and as a result of this plea in the Supreme Court, the UP government having to put in place a former judge, a retired judge and a former top cop to investigate what happened on that encounter day. It won't just be left to a UP police SIT. Let's move on and bring you the latest as far as Mirror Now's Fix Mumbai's Neighborhood campaign is concerned. And tonight we focus on another region in Mumbai's neighborhood, just on the outskirts, the region of Mira Bhayandar. Another place which is seeing a massive spike in cases. And in our latest report, we expose how the helpline doesn't help people. And this is a special report that Santya Gora has actually found for us, and how the official coronavirus helpline in this corporation area of Mira Bhayandar is just of no use. Take a look.
Now talking about the helpline number, coronavirus helpline number of Mira Bhayandar Municipal Corporation is concerned. Since today morning, our team Mirror Now is trying to contact someone on that helpline, but we are unable to get through the number. Now on camera also we'll try and make calls to the helpline number. This is the website of the municipal corporation here, and we'll take the number from this website only, which is mentioned here. So this is COVID-19 helpline number. We'll try and connect to this particular number here, because since morning we are making calls. Now talking about, so I have dialed the number here, and we'll wait for a response, whether or not we get a response. Talking about the situation of Mira Road and Bhayandar cities, both these cities, population of over 8 lakh people lives in these two cities, and as of now, there are more than 1200 active cases here. So it's ringing here, and as you can see, there is no response as of now. And remember, this is the coronavirus helpline number, which means that all the queries of a citizen related to the virus, whether it's about the hospital, whether it's about the ambulances, whether it's about the quarantine procedure, whether it's about taking more information on quarantine facilities, all this information is something which is available here as per the website of Mira Bhayandar Corporation itself. But as you can see, there is no response. So this call also is not answered. You can see that this also goes unanswered. You can hear the ring. Now this is call number 3rd, and again you can see it is not being answered. It goes, this is also as of now, it is going unanswered. So this was the 4th call which is not answered. Which is not answered. Let's try once again. I'll make another call. I'll redial the number again. So I'm making another call. Total 3 to 4 calls have been made on camera, but there is no response whatsoever. And these are the calls which we are recording. In fact, Team Mirror Now is trying since morning, but there is no response on this helpline number, COVID helpline number of Mira Road Bhayandar Municipal Corporation. You can see it's ringing, but there is absolutely no response. So these are the calls we have made, and if I dial the number again, because we have made 4 to 5 calls, and you can see that none of these calls are answered by anyone in the corporation. Not even a single call is answered. So we can understand that what exactly a citizen will be going through in order to get some information from the corporation, a number, a helpline which is dedicated for that purpose only. There's absolutely no response on that helpline, which is, and this number, let me tell you once again, is actually taken from the website of Mira Bhayandar Corporation itself, which is mentioned, that this number is actually mentioned as, in fact, you can see if that tab is still open on my phone, COVID-19 helpline room. This is the number which we are dialing. And my another call is right now, that is also it's still ringing, but again no response. So such is the condition of the helpline number, again.
कॉल करत आहात ती ह्या वेळेस उत्तर देत नाही. कृपया थोड्या वेळाने प्रयत्न करा.
Well, from Meera Bhayandar, now we are going to bring you more details of what's happening in another district, Thane district, again in Mumbai's neighborhood. Thane, viewers, has also been seeing a significant jump in COVID cases, and like all other neighboring districts, Thane has also supposedly been looking at a lockdown till 19th, and as shops opened today, we saw a massive rush. Now, these are the kind of things that cannot be acceptable. We seem to forget that coronavirus is still here. It's not gone anywhere. And it is mistakes like this which will keep on increasing the number of cases, keep on throwing us back into a state of lockdown. Here is a special report from the Kopri market, a neighborhood in the Thane district, where you can see people flocking to buy essential items, completely flouting the social distancing norms. Take a look.
After 2 weeks of lockdown, Thane markets have resumed today. According to the rules, they're supposed to open on an odd and even basis, which means one line will open today and the other tomorrow. But as you can see, with the opening of markets, has also opened the opportunities for street vending and vegetable markets. We are reporting from Kopri area in Thane. Kopri, which usually sees a crowd inside the markets because of the situation. And what we are showing you is how the street vendors have come back on the streets to start with their business. The crowd has resumed again because people are flocking the market to buy vegetables and other essentials. If we can show you around, as far as the Kopri market are concerned, the odd and even rule is being followed. Like means on one lane only one side of the shop is open and on the other side it is not open as far as the market is concerned, but it is also allowed, it has also given way to street vending, which is attracting a lot of crowd here. There are street vendors for vegetables, for fruits and for all the other essentials which have opened and flocked the market today, and very minimal police presence or a check by the authorities can be witnessed here. The markets are back to their own flavor as it was before the lockdown, and the fact that the crowd has again seemed to be building up here in Kopri market in Thane, thus giving a complete washout to the social distancing norms. With video journalist Pradeep, this is Neha for Mirror Now.
Well, in fact, Mirana also caught up with the Guardian Minister of the Thane district, Maharashtra Minister Eknath Shinde, on what was going on the fact that now finally Thane is seeing mass screening, surveillance and testing through mobile dispensaries. Here's an excerpt of that exclusive conversation we had with Eknath Shinde.
काफ़ी रीजन्स में से लॉकडाउन निकाला गया है, कंटेनमेंट एरियाज़ में अभी भी लॉकडाउन है, लेकिन सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग फ्लाउट होते हुए अभी भी दिख रही है. क्या आपकी पॉलिसी है कंटेनमेंट एरियाज़ की?
अभी जब भी लॉकडाउन हम लोगों ने किया था तब कुछ केसेस कम हुई थी और उसके बाद लॉकडाउन रिलीज़ करने के बाद थोड़ी बढ़ गई, फिर लॉकडाउन वापस स्ट्रिक्ट किया था एमएमआर में. पूरी तरह कंटेनमेंट जोन और हॉटस्पॉट को पूरी तरह एकदम स्ट्रिंजेंट किया है. मोबाइल डिस्पेंसरी के माध्यम से वहाँ पर स्क्रीनिंग करना, वहाँ पर एंटीजन टेस्ट करना, आरटीपीसीआर टेस्ट बढ़ाना और जंबो फैसिलिटी हम लोगों ने शुरू की. यहाँ पर 1100 बेड की, थाना में, नवी मुंबई में 1200 बेड की है, अंबरनाथ, बदलापुर वहाँ 1700 और 400 बेड है. कल्याण में भी फैसिलिटी बढ़ाई है, डोंबिवली में बढ़ाई है.
डबलिंग रेट अभी भी आपका ज़्यादा है, थाने, कल्याण, डोंबिवली, वैसा ये रीजन्स में इट इज़ स्टिल लेस देन 20. डबलिंग को कैसे कंट्रोल?
डबलिंग रेट कहीं पर भी अभी बढ़ा हुआ है और उसको डबलिंग रेट को हम लोग बढ़ाएंगे, डिस्चार्ज रेट को बढ़ाएंगे और डेथ रेट हम कम करेंगे.
This was Eknath Shinde, the Guardian Minister from Thane, giving out detailed responses on what and how the Mumbai Metropolitan Region's plan is to control the rising cases. With video journalist Pradeep, this is Neha Kulkarni for Mirror Now from Thane.
Moving on to the other big story we've been covering here relentlessly, the situation in Assam, the flood situation in the state of Assam. Now, viewers, we understand about 110 people have died under the impact of floods in the state of Assam. What's even more painful is the fact that 70 lakh people have actually been impacted, have been hit Many of them, thousands of them, displaced, having lost everything that they have owned so far, their home, their livelihood, all just wiped out. Golpara has now become one of the worst hit districts, with over 4.5 lakh people having been affected here. And even now the situation doesn't seem to be changing too much. No significant relief coming in for the people of Assam, who've now been battling it for many days, as the rivers flowing through the state continue to be at the danger level. In fact, let me go across to Arindam Das, who's been tracking this story for us and has been constantly getting us updates. Arindam, what's the situation right now? Take us through the latest updates.
Well, the overall flood scenario in Assam was improving, but still now over 25 lakh people remains displaced in 24 districts of the state. The death toll has gone up to 85, but the thing is that the Met Department has predicted more rainfall in the days ahead, so this might worsen the scenario further. Even as I'm speaking right now in Guwahati, there is heavy rainfall, and we are getting reports of heavy rainfall from across Assam. In fact, as you have mentioned earlier, that the Gwalbara district is the worst affected district right now, because there has been a heavy rainfall in the hilly areas of Meghalaya adjacent to Gwalpara. So that water is gushing down the rivers from the Garo Hill to Meghalaya towards Gwalpara. So this has created almost a flash flood-like situation, water level rising alarmingly. In fact, various rescue agencies like the NDRF, SDRF, and the Circle Office teams are carrying out rescue and relief operations. But the overall flood scenario in Assam, as I was mentioning, that it was improving, but now the Met Department has come up with a new warning stating that there will be heavy rainfall in the days ahead. So this might not augur well for the already flood-ravaged state of Assam.
Yes, absolutely, Arindam, because that's not a good sign at all if there's going to be more heavy rainfall that's predicted for this entire area. Stay with me. I just want to also quickly look at the fact of why is it that Assam is so prone to these floods year after year after year. We see, a similar disastrous situation take place. Now, one set is the natural factors, viewers, which includes the topography of the state and many districts in this state, which itself is extremely prone to floods and even earthquakes. The other one, of course, the big one being the river Brahmaputra, and how this river with excessive rain coming down from the mountains, invariably every single year ends up crossing the danger mark and flooding. Then the aspect about the way Kaziranga is situated and designed, there also we see that the floods do happen. Now remember, we had an expert who was speaking to us the other day who even said that actually, to a certain extent, flooding is essential for the Kaziranga habitat, but obviously not to the extent we are seeing now, where animals themselves are drowning and dying. And Assam, again, one of those northeastern states that sees heavy rainfall in a very short duration, which leads to more immediate flooding. The other factors, of course, are the more man-made factors, which is something that we can look at, helping and fixing deforestation in catchment areas. The rampant hill cutting that goes on in many parts of our country, including the northeast, the growing habitation in an ill-planned manner along the river banks, which then becomes dangerous to the same habitation itself, the release of water by the upstream dams if it's not done in a planned manner, the ecological balance that gets disturbed if the development is not done in a proper planned manner, and of course lack of a silt management policy. All of these things, usually what we see across our country, everywhere you have this kind of a situation, these are the reasons that contribute to that. Arindam is with me. Arindam, of course, a big part of the focus has been Kaziranga. The fact that a significant percentage of it, was submerged during these floods. Now, experts say Kaziranga does require, some amount of flooding and that water coming in, which is good for the natural habitat, but not to this extent. What's the latest that we know from this national park?
Well, yes, as you have mentioned, that flood is a boon as well as bane for not only Kaziranga National Park, but all the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries in Assam. Boon in the sense that it helps to maintain the ecological balance of the flora and fauna of the parks and wildlife sanctuaries. But the bane is the bigger factor because it leaves a trail of destruction, killing wild animals, displacing many. So this year also the scenario was not different. This is not the first wave of flood that Assam is witnessing, which has ravaged not only the human settlements but also the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. The Kaziranga National Park was hit along with other parts of Assam by two waves of flood this time. And in both the time, there was 95% flooding in the park, displacing thousands of wild animals, including the world famous one-horned rhino. Uh, there is also another park in the outskirts of Guwahati that is called the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, which also houses hundreds of one-horned rhinos, and there also the scenario is not different this time. So even now, I have got reports from Kaziranga National Park as well as other wildlife sanctuaries that the river level is continuously rising because of heavy rainfall in the past 24 hours, and the Met Department has predicted more rainfall. So this might also worsen the flood scenario in the already flood ravaged Kaziranga National Park as well as the other wildlife sanctuaries and national parks of Assam.
All right, Arindam, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us those updates, from Assam, which continues to face the brunt and bear the brunt of the floods. Remember, even as the flood waters recede, when they do, there will be a huge challenge for the authorities to take care of the people, the lakhs of people who've been displaced, especially in times of a pandemic. Not only do they have to battle the floods, they also have to battle the pandemic called COVID. Let's move on and get you another, story from a heartbreaking story. This one coming in from Bengaluru. And viewers, earlier in this news, Urban Debate edition, I was telling you about how abysmal and pathetic our healthcare infrastructure is. Here is another instance of that, and this is coming from India's one of our biggest metro cities, one of the most developed metro cities with the best of the infrastructure available. Still, as COVID cases spike, here is a story of a pregnant lady who had gone into labor in the city of Bengaluru, and 10 hospitals denied admission to her. For several hours, pretty much 10 hours roaming from one place to the other. They couldn't find a single bed, a single hospital that would take in this lady who had gone into labor. She was forced to then deliver a baby in an auto-rickshaw. And unfortunately, the baby stopped breathing within half an hour of being born. How can this happen even in our metro cities? Imagine what happens then in smaller rural areas where there's hardly any healthcare available. Shrija joins me with more details. Shrija, tell us.
Well, that's right, Tanvi. In fact, remember, we did carry out this entire expose where we showed our viewers that it is so difficult for a patient, that is coronavirus patient, to get a bed in any of the hospitals as far as Bengaluru city is concerned. So today, once again, a medical apathy has come to the light right now. What we see is that this particular lady, a pregnant woman, she went into labor. Now we're talking about 3 a.m. in the morning. She was, in fact, running from pillar to post from one hospital to the other. So we see that in 10 hours, that is 8 to 10 hours, she visited nearly 10 hospitals, and all the 10 hospitals just, in fact, turned her away, saying that, sorry, we do not have any bed to spare. Now, remember, we're talking about the government hospitals. Now, according to especially the BBMP, the civic body, what they tell us is that most of the hospitals have been dedicated and especially converted into COVID care. But is it something to do with what happens when a non-COVID patient comes? This is the case that we're looking at, where this pregnant woman, when she did not get admission into any of the hospitals, she went into labor inside of an auto. We see she gave birth to a baby, but within half an hour, the baby stopped breathing. But now what we understand is that after the entire sequence of events, right now she's undergoing treatment because she suffered extreme blood loss at Wani Vilas Hospital. Back to you.
All right, Shrija, thanks so much for bringing in these details of this story. Well, we're going to take a very short break, but on the other side, we get you the latest from the world of sports and the future of cricket. T20 World Cup will not be held this year. What does that mean for the IPL is the big question. Back in just a bit.